If you've ever wondered why your beats just don't sound like the pros, this video will map out the things that your beat is doing that separate the pros from your beat. So let's hop straight into FL Studio and point this out. So the first half here is like an amateur approach to beat making. On the right side is more of a pro level approach. Now the thing, I've even kept the same mastering chain. It's just one limiter here and an EQ for boosting the levels into it if we need it. But I haven't changed much except for the drum sounds. I didn't even change the instrument sounds. So let's listen to the drums on the left versus the drums on the right. Let's go all the way back. So night and day. Now, a lot of people ask me how to pick sounds. It's not about picking sounds, it's understanding the purpose of a sound. So this hi-hat, for example, is too aggressive for just modern sounds. It's too noisy and it sounds more like a snare than a hi-hat. Now, a lot of the stock sounds in FL Studio, you usually want to avoid the stock sounds. You know, as a producer, you need to spend a day or two and look for samples, whether that's samples of records or drum breaks or drum kits. Just look for samples online, spend a day or two and just search all the drum kits you can find, because you'll find out very quickly that you're using stock sounds, and the stock sounds are not built for our genres, okay, for the most part. For example, if you go into drums and kicks, these are not the kicks we use. These might be for like house and stuff, but not for hip hop. So that's half the reason why you guys' beats sound awful, is because you're using the wrong starting materials. You know, it's equivalent to me trying to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and I start with chicken. It's not even remotely close. I'm sure there's a scientific way to turn chicken into jelly, but as we know currently, you know, that could take a lot of time and expertise. It's a lot easier if you start off with jelly and peanut butter to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Everybody wants to start with elephant ears and try to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's like, just start with peanut butter and jelly. Okay, so that's firstly is sound selection, but that's a vague term and I don't want to scare beginners thinking that you need to know everything about sounds, because I teach a 4-step process. I don't have time to teach it today, but this beat covers what's called a top line. This is another reason why amateur beats don't sound good, is because they don't follow these 4 categories of sound. The top line is your memorable melody, which is this part here. It's really simple. It uses the rules of 3. Then we have the harmony. This is your chord section. This is the glue to the track. It usually has a contrast layer in the bass notes, and contrast gives the track density. Okay, so here is the contrast layer for this song. Now it can also be a bass line as well. So technically the 808 is the contrast layer. We marked it rhythm, but this should be a contrast layer. Now one reason this 808 is not good, I'll say, is because one, we have what's called clipping on, so it sounds super boxy and squarey, but then also 2, it just has too much bass and it's too compressed. So on the master here, we're running it through a limiter. And as a beginner, even though you're not getting the processing from the limiter, most beginners just slam the limiter and they turn everything up, and it just makes the plugins work way too hard, and it creates a very squishy sound that does not sound good. So I'd recommend, if you guys are going to use this, if you're not intentional about this, this can hinder you. So I recommend to not use clipping if you use the boost. That's just a recommendation, not a mandatory step. So now you get a cleaner 808, but you can always distort in different ways. Okay, so I'm not telling you not to distort, but the reason your 808s usually sound crazy is because most people clip it, which squares off the sound and makes it very boxy sounding. They do that with kicks too, which makes that worse. So it's that hi-hat that doesn't have any finesse to the bounce. It's just like, it just sounds like a sound effect. And most people will try to, you know, they'll try to correct this sound. Like they might fade it out truncate it with some out fade. And they'll try to add an envelope here to try to correct this bad sound. But no amount of fixing these bad sounds is going to make them sound good. Okay, because it's just the source sound is not good. So all I did was change out the drums and it made a dramatic difference. So the lessons you guys can learn so far is just picking the right starting sound. It's a lot easier when you have the exact sounds that you're trying to chase rather than trying to make a sound that's not the sound into the sound. You'll spend so much time trying to do that. Okay, the next thing is over compression here. So I'm going to exaggerate. So let's say you swap out the drums and you have good drums now. Let's go to the master channel here for the beat mix. And let's compress this beat unnecessarily. Now, a lot of beginners do this and they wonder why their mixes sound muddy. It's because when you are compressing, you are changing the waveform most of the time. And most of the time it creates a very squared off sound. So a lot of beginners will just push the gain knob into the ceiling here. And they'll be like, okay, it's louder, but it's not better. Like here's before. It has dynamic, it has movement, and people just for the sake of loudness, they just slam a limiter on. So let me show you guys a better way. Instead of just slamming a limiter, let me show you guys how to use the Fruity limiter in a better way. So firstly, what we need to do is find our drum and our components. I'm just going to speed through this because we don't have time to go through everything here. Just turn them down in the mixer. My recommendation is 9 dB. You can read the values in the top left here. So I like starting at -9 dB. I pull all the faders down. Then we go to the beat mix here, which is where they are grouped, all these sounds. And I'm going to add an EQ2 on the left side. I learned this from Lifestyle Did It. Shout out to him. I didn't realize this far left fader is an actual main level knob. So basically you can turn your beat up and down with this. So let's pull it up 9 dB to compensate for the fact that we turned down the faders. So this is, for beginners, this is basically allowing more headroom, it's called, on our track. Think of it like space on a computer, basically. So we're basically telling the system to artificially fill up the computer, but really it's not full. You know, this is the beat. But we're saying, let's artificially assume that we're filling up the hard drive, metaphorically speaking, even though we're not technically turning up the hard drive space, so that when we create, we're not going to go over that. So this is what we're doing it for. I know that was a rough analogy here. Let's load up Fruity limiter here. We're going to load up what's called the saturation. And this is going to give us, now for trap, you're not going to use this as much. Before acoustic and boom bap, you might use this a little bit more, but this will give you more headroom too, because when we turn up the gain knob on this and turn the ceiling up so that we get no compression here, we're shaving off the top parts of the audio. So all the pointy stuff will become shaved off and it creates more of an even experience in your beat. Now again, with trap, you're not really doing too much of this because there's not a big difference in sound most of the time. Let's push it just so you guys can hear. So that's an aggressive amount of saturation. I still think the 808 is a little too overpowering, so let's pull it down. Okay, so we found like so you can get a lot of energy out of that. And then lastly, we could add a limiter just to sit at 0. We're not compressing though. We're not going to even push the gain knob. This is just to make sure we're not going past 0. So just with those, 3 plugins, here's before. To be fair though, the before has to be just this. So here's before. Now let's turn these on. Now notice I'm not using Fruity Soft Clipper. Now I'm pushing this really aggressively. And that's only 2 plugins, 1 saturator and 1 limiter. And we're using the EQ as a gain knob, so it's really not even like processing the sound really. So that's all you need. A lot of people they just overly do everything and their beat becomes more squished Now those are just a couple FL Studio plugins. So again, going over the quick list is you guys picking the wrong sounds, and you may overly compress without realizing it. So that's a chain you guys could use if you're a beginner. Some people may insert the Fruity Soft Clipper, but it just depends on the style that you're going for. It's not mandatory, but the Fruity Soft Clipper is another great tool. It just depends on the song. So we can overly kill it. If we turn this to the left, this is soft clipping. It kills some of the headroom or some of the transients. And it can make your beat sound really squished. When you turn this to the right, however, it's not as squished. But again, to really hear the power of that, you have to push what's called the input gain into the soft clipper, and then you need to compensate with the post level here. So I'm just going to push the volume in. Slowly turn up the post level here. So it's not the soft clipper adding that energy, it's really the saturator. Okay, so again, here's before. Again, that's not a true before. Here's before. It's like sounds are there, but it's not dense. Let's add our chain back. All right, so just those small plugin changes can, take you guys from beginner level to pro level really quickly. Nextly is this changes. Now this I have to teach you guys over time. So if you want the full course, go to busyworksbeats.com/betterbeatmaker, because this small video is not going to cover everything about this. But basically what you can do if you ever get stuck with beat block, try taking these 4 layers and adding what I call expression layers. So the top line has another layer called the top line expression layer. The harmony section has the same thing. The harmony has an expression layer. The contrast layer. So you may ask, okay, what makes something expressive and what makes it not expressive? So for example, rhythm expression might be hi-hat rolls. Contrast might be 808 slides. Harmony expression might be a chord pitch bend. And the top line expression could be chord, pitch bending, or it could be fast playing, or like phrases, for example. Now we're going to add, these expression layers here. So the expression layers are going to do usually pitch bends, or just playing the chords differently, or playing a counter melody. There's different reasons you would use each layer. So it's not the sound, it's the purpose of the sound. It's how the sound performs. So let's go here and add some top line expressive stuff. So that simple pitch bend, grabs the ear a little bit more. Next, let's move into the harmony sound here, and let's add some chord bends. Now I'm using the same exact sound, so this is not adding anything. So we're just going to do things like this. Okay, so this is adding an expression and articulation to the sounds, not just notes. It's performing the instrument, and that's the difference here. And then we have this contrast layer. Let's just add some kind of counter melody. So if you want to create changes in your beat, you could either remove the main components and use the expressive components, or we can just stack these. So this is why having these layers helps, because now you can switch between, you know, the main sound and then an alternative sound or an alternative performance. So again, we're using the same exact sounds, even if you guys only use stock sounds. All right, so if you guys want to learn how to make beats like the pros, go to busyworksbeats.com/betterbeatmaker, because in that course, I will show you guys what makes the pro beats sound better than the amateur beats, and I explain the why. So again, as a quick recap for the people who skip all the way to the end, the reason your beats sound usually amateurish is because of the sound selection, and I talked about it's more than just knowing the exact kick somebody used. Then mostly amateurs, they overly compress because they're not thinking about how to create saturation and chop off transients. So they overly compress in their limiter and compressor stages. And then you have, you know, amateurs who usually don't create enough change in their beats. And the reason is because they don't have enough components to actually rearrange. So that is the process. And I gave you guys a free mastering chain you guys could try out for your beats in FL Studio. So again, we use the same exact stock sounds. The only sounds we swapped out were the drums. That made a huge difference. One last pro tip is timing. So I forgot to mention here with the hi-hat, the reason it has a groove to it or like a bounce to it is because under the wrench tool, the time shift is turned up just a little bit. Now amateurs, they just turn it, they keep this at 0. And every song is different, so I can't tell you to do that every single song, but just those small little time differences make a huge difference in the way your beat bounces. All right, guys, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Go to busyworksbeats.com/betterbeatmaker to learn more and learn how to make beats like the pros. Peace out, guys.